They tried to put me in a retirement home to sell my house behind my back. So I signed the place over, to someone they hate most. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. My name is Gerald Walker. I am 77 years old. A retired fireman. A widower. A father of 2 grown children who used to call me their rock, until I became, in their words, a liability. That word still echoes sometimes when I sit alone with a mug of reheated coffee, staring out the kitchen window at the oak tree I planted the year my son was born. Liability. Like I am something that must be managed, contained, and eventually removed. It's funny how quickly people forget what you've done for them when you're no longer doing it. I paid for their education. Helped them with down payments on their first homes. Took care of the grandkids every summer when they needed to travel or breathe or figure things out. I was there when Trent lost his job and needed a loan I never got back. I was there when Louise needed help juggling her second divorce and a toddler with night terrors. I never complained. Never hesitated. And now? I am too inconvenient to keep around. But we'll get to that. The real betrayal came on a Wednesday. I remember because I had just finished trimming the hedges out front. My back ached, knees crackled when I straightened up, but the clean line of the shrubs against the stone path brought a sense of order, of dignity. That yard had been mine for over 5 decades. My sweat is in that soil, literally. I built the retaining wall with my own hands in 1976. The front porch swing was a 10th anniversary gift to my wife, Martha. It still creaks the same way when the wind hits it just right. This house, it is not just a house. Martha and I bought it in 1972. She had fallen in love with the wraparound porch and the deep clawfoot tub in the upstairs bathroom. I fell in love with the idea of her cooking in the kitchen while I fixed up the garage into a workshop. Kids playing underfoot, the kind of future you used to see in old magazine ads. We poured everything we had into it, literally emptied our savings to make the down payment, and for the first 10 years, we couldn't afford a single vacation. But we didn't care. We painted every wall ourselves. We patched the roof one miserable November with a borrowed ladder and hands so cold we couldn't feel the hammer. That was the winter Martha told me she was pregnant with our second. By 1987, the place was paid off. No more mortgage, no more banks. Just wood, stone, and memories. We raised 2 kids here. Hosted more birthdays, barbecues, and late-night Christmas Eve toy assemblies than I can count. When my daughter lost her first tooth, she tucked it under her pillow in the room that would later become Martha's sewing nook. When my son broke his arm climbing the apple tree out back, I carried him to the truck right from that lawn, barefoot and panicked, yelling at Martha to grab ice and his shoes. Every inch of this place is layered with a life I was proud to live. Then, 3 years ago, Martha died in the upstairs bedroom. Cancer. It came faster than either of us expected. She insisted she wanted to go at home. I never left her side. After the funeral, people kept telling me, "You should sell the house, Gerald. Too many memories. Too much space." But those memories, they are not weights. They are anchors. And yes, the house is too big for one person. The boiler needs coaxing every fall. The steps creak differently now, and the guest room is just storage. But I kept it up. I mowed the lawn. I swept the fireplace. I dusted her framed embroidery pieces and left her slippers by the bed because I could not bring myself to move them. Sometimes, if I close the bedroom door and leave the windows shut, the room still smells like her lilac perfume. Soft, faint, almost imagined, but it's there. It's enough. That morning, I had just finished bagging the hedge clippings when Louise pulled into the driveway. Her husband, Trent, got out a second later. He was already smirking like he knew something I did not. They brought banana bread. That was my first clue. And my last moment of peace. "Dad," Louise said, setting the banana bread down on the counter like it was a peace treaty, "can we talk about something important?" Her voice had that careful tone, the one she used when she was preparing to say something she knew I wouldn't like. She used it the first time she told me she was marrying Trent. Back then, I told myself to smile, to trust her judgment. But judgment wears thin when you're in love with a man whose only real skill is pretending to listen. Trent stepped in behind her, hands in his vest pockets, eyes scanning the kitchen like he was assessing square footage. That vest, puffy and bright blue, made him look like a lost hiker who wandered into civilization by mistake. I had never liked the way he walked into a room like he already owned it. He was always too quick with praise and too slow with gratitude. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, folding it neatly before I spoke. "Always keep your hands busy," my old fire captain used to say. "Gives your mouth time to think." "Of course," I said. "What's on your mind?" They exchanged a glance. Louise shifted her weight from foot to foot. Trent cleared his throat, trying to look concerned but already sounding rehearsed. "It's about your safety, Gerald," he said. "The stairs. The yard work. You're not young anymore. We just worry." I waited a beat, watching him. The man had never trimmed a hedge or fixed a faucet in his life, but suddenly he was concerned about mine. Not once had he offered to help with the place after Martha passed. Not once had he come by unless there was a holiday or a reason to take something. Louise jumped in quickly, like she'd been waiting for her cue. "What Trent's trying to say," she began, "is that we found this beautiful senior living facility. It's called Lakeside Trails. It's just 20 minutes from us. You'd have your own suite, Dad. Big windows. Clean rooms. They have on-site nurses, community meals, even woodworking classes and a little library." She smiled like she was describing a weekend getaway. Her eyes were bright, but her mouth was tight at the corners. The kind of smile you wear when you're already bracing for resistance. The banana bread might as well have been a brick. I looked at it, still warm, wrapped neatly in wax paper like a guilt offering, and wondered if she baked it herself or picked it up from the overpriced bakery near her Pilates studio. "I don't need a nurse," I said, keeping my voice steady. "And I'm capable of running my life just fine." I saw Trent's smirk before he even realized it had surfaced. That smug, sideways twitch of the lip he always tried to hide when he thought he had the upper hand. "It's not about what you need now," he said, in that smooth, managerial tone that probably worked on his employees. "It's about what you might need soon. Prevention. Planning." His words dripped with false concern, slick, professional, cold. I opened my mouth to ask why they were suddenly so worried about my well-being, but Louise cut me off with the line that made the bottom fall out of my stomach. "We already put down a deposit." Just like that. Like it was already decided. Like my consent was just a formality they had generously decided to inform me about. The coffee pot in my hand trembled slightly, and I set it down before I dropped it. My hands were calloused from years of swinging axes and hauling hoses up 3-story buildings in smoke so thick it swallowed the sun. Those hands had carried both of my children on my shoulders. They had held Martha's hand during her last breath. And now, those same hands were shaking because my daughter had sold off my independence behind my back. You what? I asked softly. Louise looked down at her shoes, small, stylish things that probably cost more than the tools in my shed. They were running a promotion, she said. Only a small fee to reserve the room. It's a really good deal. And it's refundable if I behave. I said, sharper than I meant to. Trent stepped forward. It's not a punishment, Gerald. It's peace of mind, for all of us. Peace of mind. For all of us. Not a single word about what I wanted. I stared at them. My daughter, who used to cry when I left for overnight shifts at the station. Who once sat on my shoulders through the entire 4th of July parade because she didn't want to miss a single firework. And Trent, always careful with his words, never with his intentions. Tell me something, I said, leaning on the edge of the counter. What happens to this house while I'm tucked away in Lakeside Trails? Louise hesitated. Just a second. Just enough. Well, Trent said, with too much confidence, we thought it'd make sense to list it. The market's high. It'd give you more options. Security. And what would you do with the money? Another pause. Louise's eyes darted away. We'd manage it responsibly, Trent said. Help with your care. Maybe set aside some for the kids' college fund. It's all staying in the family. That was the moment I understood. They weren't worried about my safety. They were circling an asset. They saw the house not as a home but as leverage. As value. As equity. They had already done the math, probably weeks ago, and all they needed now was my signature, or my silence. I didn't say anything for a long time. Just stood there, the quiet stretching so thin you could hear the faint tick of the wall clock above the pantry. My pulse pounded in my ears, not from rage, but from the slow rise of something colder. Resolve. Well, I finally said, reaching for the banana bread and peeling back the wax paper, this smells store-bought. Louise blinked, thrown off. What? You didn't make it yourself. You never did like baking. Your mother did. You used to sneak the chocolate chips out of her mixing bowl. Her face flushed slightly. Dad, this isn't the point. No, I said, slicing off a piece, I guess it's not. I just like to know what's homemade and what's packaged. Makes it easier to tell who really put in the work. I took a bite and chewed slowly. Too sweet. No balance. All surface, no soul. Thanks for coming by, I added. I'll think about it. They seemed relieved. But I wasn't thinking about Lakeside Trails. I was already thinking about who I'd call that night. And what I would leave behind, not for them, but because of them. That night, I didn't sleep much. I sat in the armchair across from the cold fireplace, a blanket wrapped around my legs, staring at the last photo we ever took as a family. Thanksgiving, 5 years ago. Martha's eyes still full of light, Louise smiling with her hand on my shoulder, Trent mid-toast with a wine glass. It was staged, like most family moments are, but back then, I believed it. The next morning, I called Margaret Pendleton. She had been our lawyer for decades. Martha adored her. Sharp as a whip and discreet to a fault. She handled our wills, the trust for the kids, the deed transfer back in the 80s when we refinanced during that short financial scare. The woman remembered every decimal and every clause. She picked up on the third ring. Gerald Walker. I was wondering when I'd hear from you again. Still keeping everyone honest? I asked. Only the ones who pay me, she said with a dry chuckle. You want to come in? I do, I replied. But I need to make some changes. And I don't want them to know. 24 hours later, I was sitting in her office, same burgundy walls, same coffee stain on the edge of her desk from a mug I spilled in 2009. Margaret hadn't aged a day. She wore her steel-gray hair in a bun tight enough to make a judge nervous. What are we adjusting today? She asked, flipping open her leather folio. My will. My trust. The deed. Everything. She raised an eyebrow. That's a lot of everything. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the diplomas on her wall. I think I've been preparing for death like a man prepares for retirement. Neat. Predictable. Well-intentioned. But lately, Margaret. I've been wondering if I should be preparing for life instead. She didn't say anything right away. Just reached for her pen. Tell me what happened. I told her, about the banana bread, the deposit, at Lakeside Trails, the conversation that sounded more like an ambush than concern. I didn't sugarcoat it. I didn't need to. When I finished, she nodded once. I assume you want to disinherit your children. No, I said. I want to beat them at their own game. She tilted her head. I want to transfer the house to someone who won't treat it like a payout. Someone who'll protect it. Use it. Honor what it meant to Martha and me. Who? My nephew, Ryan. She blinked. The same Ryan who had the driving under the influence charges. Spent some time in rehab. That was 15 years ago. He's clean now. Works as a social worker. Helps veterans find housing, jobs, purpose. He's the only one who still calls me without needing something. He sends Christmas cards, Margaret. Actual ones. With stamps. She smiled faintly and began writing. And what do you want done with the house? I want to sign it over immediately, but with conditions. He can't sell it. He can live in it, or he can use it for his nonprofit. I want veterans living in those rooms. Men who've been through fire and earned something solid. And the will. Adjust it. Strip Louise and Trent out entirely. Everything else, savings, insurance, my pension, goes to Ryan. If he doesn't want it, he can put it into his foundation. Margaret paused. This will cause friction, Gerald. There's already friction, I said. All I'm doing now is replacing the fuse with a firewall. She slid the draft paperwork across the desk, and I scanned the opening line. In recognition of a life built not on inheritance but on integrity. I stopped reading. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt my chest unclench. Not relief, not yet, but something close. Something like reclamation. I thought back to the firehouse. My first day on the job, 1971, downtown, Station 3. Captain Halloran tossed me a helmet and said, "Kid, the fire gets a vote. You don't control the outcome. But you damn sure better control how you walk into it." I never forgot that. And now, here I was, walking into a different kind of fire. As I signed the first document, I heard Martha's voice in my mind. Make your life count, Jerry. Even after it's done. And maybe for the first time since she passed, I felt like I was doing exactly that. It was just after 6 p.m. when I called Ryan. I caught him in the middle of fixing a leaky pipe in a donated duplex 2 streets over from the bus depot. Typical. That boy never stopped working, even when no one was watching. He said he could come by later that evening. I told him I'd have coffee and sandwiches waiting. When he pulled into the driveway just after sunset, I noticed something immediately. He parked off to the side, like he didn't want to assume he belonged. That hit me harder than I expected. I watched from the kitchen window as he stood outside for a moment, eyes scanning the house like it was holy ground. He hadn't been here in a while. Not since Martha's funeral. But I knew he remembered every brick. I opened the door before he could knock. "Uncle Jerry," he said, offering a sheepish smile. "You look good. Strong. You still lie like a man who used to need rides home from court," I replied, clapping him on the shoulder. He laughed, an honest, full laugh that filled the entryway in a way it hadn't felt since Martha passed. Inside, he looked around like the place was a museum. "It still smells like her," he said, running a finger over the old upright piano. "She kept lilac oil in the air vents," I told him. "Said it made the dust feel civilized." We sat at the table. I poured him a mug of coffee and slid over a plate of roast beef sandwiches. He didn't eat right away. Just looked at me, a little puzzled, a little guarded. "I'm guessing this isn't just a family dinner," he said. "No," I said. "It's a question. And a proposition." He raised an eyebrow. I pulled the folder from the counter and placed it between us. Clean white paper. Crisp signatures. Margaret's initials in red ink. The sound of the pages sliding across the oak was louder than it should have been. "I signed the house over to you," I said plainly. "It's yours now." He didn't move. I thought maybe he hadn't heard me, but his eyes were locked on the folder like it was a lit fuse. "You what?" I repeated it. "The house. Deeds in your name. With conditions." He leaned back, almost knocking over his coffee. "Uncle Jerry, I can't accept that. This house, this is your life. It's everything you built. That's why it matters where it goes," I said. "They want to sell it. Louise and Trent. Ship me off to a retirement cage, turn this place into open-concept purgatory and cash in before I'm even cold." His face hardened. "I want it to mean something. I want it to shelter people who actually need shelter. You're already doing that kind of work. And you're the only one in this family who hasn't tried to put a dollar sign on my head." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, softly. "I used to come here when I was 10, you remember? That summer Mom sent me while she was in the hospital. I slept in the guest room with the skylight. Martha made pancakes every morning and you let me mow the lawn even though I was too small for the mower." "I remember," I said. "You gave me work when I needed purpose. You gave me a roof when I didn't have one. And now you're giving me a house. This house." "I'm giving you a chance," I corrected. "The house comes with it. Use it right, or don't take it at all." He looked down, blinking hard. "Uncle Jerry, this would change everything. I've got 6 vets right now sleeping on cots in a church basement. I've got a waiting list longer than my arm. If I had a place like this, with real beds, real heat." "You'd have a home," I said. He nodded, swallowing hard. "I don't want a plaque or a bench," I added. "I don't want my name on a sign. I just want someone to remember what this house was for. It raised a family. It weathered storms. And if it can raise a few more men back into their feet before I go, then it's still doing what it was built to do." Ryan reached out, slowly, and placed his hand over mine. No one's ever done something like this for me. I swear to you, I'll honor it. I'll fix what needs fixing. I'll keep it full of good people. You have my word. I nodded. That's all I need. We sat in silence for a while, the way men do when words become unnecessary. Outside, the porch light flickered, old wiring in need of an update, same as me. As Ryan stood to leave, he stopped in the doorway and looked back. Do they know yet? Not yet. He smirked. I hope I'm here when they find out. Oh, I'll make sure of it. He left with the folder tucked under his arm and something else in his eyes. Purpose, maybe. Or peace. Whatever it was the right man carrying the right weight. For the first time in weeks, I turned off the light and went to bed without locking the front door. Because someone I trust finally has the keys. 3 days later they showed up without warning. I heard the tires first, crunching over gravel like they owned it. Louise and Trent. I stood slowly, wiping my hands on my jeans, and took my time walking to the front yard. No rush. I already knew what they came for, and what they didn't know. Trent was out of the car before the engine even stopped, barking orders at no one in particular. Let's start with the attic, then the master bedroom, he said, striding up the porch steps. There's probably some antiques we can flip. He reached for the doorknob. It didn't turn. He frowned, jiggled it. Gerald? Louise called, stepping out in heels, of all things. Why is the door locked? I reached the porch just as she tried her key. It didn't fit. Neither did the smile she tried to slap on when she turned to face me. Dad, did you change the locks? No, I said calmly. Ryan did. She blinked. Ryan? The new owner. You remember Ryan? Trent stared at me like I was speaking a different language. You sold the house. Without telling us. I didn't sell it, I said. I gave it away. Silence. Louise's face drained of color. You what? I gave it to someone who won't treat it like an ATM machine. Someone who still understands what this place was built for. Trent's mouth fell open. Then, of course, came the scoff. That's absurd. He's a recovering addict. He doesn't know the first thing about property management. He knows how to respect people. That's more than I can say for you. Louise stepped forward, voice tight. Dad, this isn't funny. You had no right. I had every right, I interrupted. It was never yours. Not the house. Not the land. Not the memories. And certainly not the decision. She threw her hands up. You're acting irrational. Ryan probably manipulated you. He took advantage of your grief. You mean the grief you tried to monetize? That shut her up. Trent stepped forward, chest puffed. You'll regret this, Gerald. You've made a terrible mistake. Do you even know how much this property is worth? I do, I said. But for once, that's not what I'm measuring. He opened his mouth again, but I held up a hand. You came here thinking you'd pack up my life in cardboard boxes. That I'd be too tired or too sentimental to stop you. You were wrong. Louise shook her head in disbelief. We had plans. This house was supposed to fund your new life. I asked. Get you into the neighborhood with the gated drive and the 3-car garage. Or was it going to help Trent launch that wine label he won't shut up about? Trent flushed red. Louise looked away. I spent my whole life building things, I said. Homes. Marriages. Trust. You've spent yours assuming they were yours to tear down. Louise took a breath like she was going to apologize, then didn't. Her mouth just closed again. Ryan will be living here now, I said. And so will 6 men who've seen more war and fire than you ever will. They'll sleep under this roof, eat at this table, and take care of this land like it's their own. Trent scoffed again. Veterans? You're turning this place into a halfway house. No, I said. I'm turning it into a home. Again. I stepped off the porch, onto the lawn, and walked past them without another word. From the driveway, I heard Louise hiss, "We're not done." But she was wrong. Because I was. The house was still again. Ryan had come by earlier with 2 of the guys who'd be moving in next week. One was a Navy medic. The other had done 3 tours and still flinched at slamming doors. They stood in Martha's old kitchen like it was a chapel. Said thank you too many times. I told them to stop. After they left, I made myself a cup of tea, Earl Grey, the kind Martha used to oversteep. I sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around the mug, watching the porch light flicker like it always did when the wind caught the eaves just right. I could almost hear her voice again. You've done right, Jerry. You made it matter. I looked around the room. Same cabinets I built when Louise was still in braces. Same wood floor where Trent dropped his beard during his first visit and never cleaned it properly. Same wallpaper Martha picked out in a catalog because it reminded her of her grandmother's farmhouse. Everything was the same. And yet, everything had changed. I reached into the drawer by the fridge and took out the envelope. It was addressed to Louise and Trent, written in my neatest block letters. Inside was a single-page copy of the legal deed transfer, signed, notarized, and sealed. Just enough for them to understand that the world had moved on without them. No explanations. No pleading. Just the cold, formal truth in black ink. I placed the envelope on the mantel, right beneath Martha's photograph. Then I went to bed. Next morning, I was trimming the lavender near the mailbox when their car screeched to a halt out front. Trent stormed up the path before Louise had even closed her door, waving the paper like it had insulted his mother. Trent was nearly vibrating. You've ruined our plans. You've destroyed your own legacy. I turned and looked him straight in the eye. No. I reclaimed it. Louise dropped onto the front step, folding into herself like a child who had just lost the game she was always sure she'd win. Her voice was small. We were trying to help you. I nodded. Maybe you thought so. But somewhere between the banana bread and the down payment on a care home I never agreed to, you stopped helping and started harvesting. They didn't speak. The wind picked up a little. Carried the scent of cut lavender into the air. You'll challenge this, Trent muttered. We'll get a lawyer. You'll spend more money than you have trying to take something I no longer owe you, I said. And when you lose, and you will lose, you'll realize this isn't about property. It's about the part of me you lost the right to access when you treated me like luggage instead of a father. Louise looked up, tears brimming now. You think Ryan deserves it more than we do? I think Ryan remembers what it means to build something without expecting a reward. She didn't argue. She just stood slowly, walked to the car, and paused at the door. Are you going to be okay, Dad? She asked. I nodded once. I already am. After all events, the house is different now. There's laughter in the hallways again. Tools in the garage. New sheets in the guest rooms. A grill out back where Trent once griped about propane. Ryan stays in the upstairs room. The one with the skylight. He keeps the place spotless. No one drinks in the house. Every Sunday, they cook together, family style. There's a whiteboard in the living room with everyone's chores. One of the guys wrote home base across the top in red marker. They invited me to dinner tonight. I brought a pie. It sat on the same table where Louise once tried to pitch me on selling my life. We passed around mashed potatoes. Ryan said grace. And for the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel like a burden. I felt like the foundation. Like a man who still knew how to build something that would last.
Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed listening to the story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel to help support the creation of more stories like this. Have a great day or evening.